Hey folks, I went to a Doctor Who convention event this past weekend, Whoville 14. I met a bunch of doctors. Let's talk about it. So for those of you who don't know, in Derby there's a Doctor Who fan club appreciation society called the Whovers, and every year they host a Doctor Who convention called Whoville, and this was Whoville 14, where basically a bunch of Doctor Who fans converge on Derby, specifically the quad venue, and just geek out and have a fun time with panels, with photos, autographs, and things like that. Regular viewers of mine will know that I don't really regularly attend conventions that often, mainly because I can't afford the travel, accommodation, and then when you get there you've got to spend like £40 or £50 for an autograph or a photo or whatever. But what appealed to me about Whoville, and the reason that I went, is because with your entry ticket you got one free autograph with almost every single guest there. But let me back up. So first of all, it was a really lovely warm day in Derby, not too hot, not too cold, it wasn't raining, it was good weather for conventions. The Premier Inn and the parking was just across the road from the venue, which was really ideal because what I did was that I brought a load of box sets and a load of things for people to sign over the course of the day, and thankfully as the day went on I could actually just offload the stuff that had been signed in my car, so I wasn't just lugging around a full bag of stuff all day. 10 out of 10, highly recommended. And when you arrive you're given a wristband so you can get in and out the building no problem, and also you are given this. This is basically your Bible handbook for the day, and it tells you all of the events that are going to be taking place over the course of the day, who's going to be there and what time they're happening, as well as where the venues are going to be over the course of the day. You're also given this sheet. Whenever you have an autograph with one of the guests who's attending the convention, they've got like a chaperone, like an assistant at their table, and they will sign in here so that you can clarify whether or not you've had an autograph from them over the course of the day. If you wanted, you can pay for additional autographs, but this gets you one free one. From this list, I got almost everyone. Stephen Noonan was unfortunately unable to attend during the day. I don't actually think I saw Tim Treloar at all. We'll get to that in a minute. And I did bump into the War Doctor, Big Finish War Doctor, Jonathan Carley, at the very end of the day. It was lovely to see him as well. But yeah, so the big draw at the start of the event was the Mythmakers panel. So Mythmakers is a online series as well as like independent DVD series where they film these really in-depth conversations with people involved in Doctor Who, whether they be writers, directors, actors, etc. And they were recording some of them live, and because they were recording them for distribution on DVD or online later, they didn't want people walking in midway through or leaving midway through to get in the way of the cameras and such. And there were two of these over the course of the day at the Sir John Hurt Cinema, which was a really nice venue on the top floor of the building, and to get there you have to walk through a corridor where there's a bunch of John Hurt posters, including a Doctor Who magazine at the end. And at the start of the day there was a Sylvester McCoy interview where he was interviewed by Sophie Aldred, and then later on in the day it was the other way around. Sylvester McCoy was interviewing Sophie Aldred, and as much as I would have loved to have gone there and watched that panel, watched that event, I wasn't able to because at the start of the event Michael Jaston, who played the Valyard in The Trial of a Time Lord, he was doing autographs downstairs, and that was the only time across the day that he would be doing autographs. Actors like Paul McGann, Sylvester McCoy, Sophie Aldred, Matthew Waterhouse, they were downstairs doing autographs for a lot of the day. They had multiple slots, but that was the only time you'd be able to get Michael Jaston. So I stayed downstairs and I got in the queue to see Paul McGann. Now, Paul is somebody who I'd seen from a distance in person before at MCM Comic Con last year when I was invited to be part of the Doctor Who community fan show. But when I was there, I didn't have anything for him to sign. So literally like 2 days before I went to Derby, I bought the Doctor Who TV movie Blu-ray so I actually had something for him to sign. And thankfully this Blu-ray comes with a reversible cover, which I was able to get Paul McGann to sign. And Paul was absolutely lovely. I got to his table, I was like, oh, it's lovely to meet you. He said, it's lovely to meet you too. Shake my hand. And he just like, he put his hand right in front of my face. Oh, hi. Lovely to meet you.
And you.
Oh.
Shake my hand.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome into my office.
You keep a very tight ship here. I like it. Unfortunately, I didn't quite have time to tell him how much that me and my wife loved him as David Talbot in the 2002 classic Queen of the Damned, but I did get to say how lovely it was to see him in the Anne Williams biopic last year for ITV, which is based around the mother of a Hillsborough disaster victim, and Paul McGann had a short appearance in that. And he talked about working on that, how he and his brother were at the Hillsborough disaster, and when he heard that they were making this production, he rang up and asked if he could be a part of it somehow. And he was on set for like 4 or 5 hours one day, and he was able to get involved, and it was a great thing that he could. But yeah, first autograph of the day, the lovely Paul McGann. Great start to Hooverville. I got in the queue for Michael Jaston, and they were handing out these for free at the event. This is Real Time, or aka Time Travel TV, giving away the Doctor's The Sylvester McCoy Years. These DVDs that I'm presuming they just wanted to offload a load of stock. I'm not sure, but free DVD, yay! 2-disc special collector's edition, 5 hours of pure nostalgia. Well, 5 hours, nice. Okay, I'll check that out at some point. But yeah, got in the queue for Michael Jaston, got to chat with him a little bit about Only Fools and Horses and Doctor Who and how he scared my mum growing up, and there we go. Second autograph of the day, Michael Jaston on my season 23 Trial of a Time Lord box set. And nice, he signed right in the middle. Lovely stuff, love it. He was also wearing a really lovely, like, grey silver blazer. He looked sharp, man, he looked good. So while I was downstairs getting autographs, upstairs was the Mythmakers panel with Sophie Aldred interviewing Sylvester McCoy, and in another theatre as well, Cinema 2 I think it was called, they had a Big Finish Doctors event. You had Michael Troughton, Tim Treloar, Jonathan Carley having a chat. They were doing signings, they were doing autographs. That would have been a really cool thing that I could have gone to, but there was Mythmakers happening in the other cinema, which was like the headline event. Literally, Sylvester McCoy is at the front of the leaflet, it's the marquee event, and it was the only time to get a Michael Jaston autograph. And this is the thing about many conventions, and I definitely learned that during Hooverville, you are going to have to pick and choose. You are going to have to plan where you're going to be and when you're going to do it. But I was on my way upstairs to the John Hurt Theatre to go to the Matthew Waterhouse panel, and to get upstairs you have to pass by the entrance, and by the entrance to the quad there was this replica TARDIS prop. There was also a David Tennant Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit spacesuit, and that's owned by a company called Staffordshire TARDIS, who do public events like this. And I think that they're always at Hooverville with their TARDIS prop. I've seen it in prior videos and photos from previous Hoovervilles. And the gentleman running the operation had cottoned on somehow that I was involved in Doctor Who. I was getting a selfie with somebody who recognised me outside the TARDIS, and then I think he sort of cottoned on who I was. And inside of the TARDIS are a bunch of signatures and autographs from loads of people involved in Doctor Who, like properly involved in Doctor Who. And this guy was like, no, we actually want your autograph on the inside, and I'll take some photos, which was immensely flattering. Like, I've got an autograph with people like Wendy Padbury's, whose name was very prominently there. Like, she was actually in the show. Why do you want my autograph? But okay, fine. So I am now part of Staffordshire TARDIS, the interior signatures. That was a lovely moment. Thank you very much. So yeah, went upstairs to the John Hurt Theatre. Matthew Waterhouse was interviewed by Robert Dick, talking about his like novelizations from Big Finish, his time working on the show, of course, and writing generally. Really lovely chat, really lovely hour-long interview, but it was slightly overshadowed because on my way into the John Hurt Theatre, all I could think about was what I saw, what I witnessed there, where they were wondering whether or not Sophie Aldred could actually pick up Sylvester McCoy. Apparently she can. After that, I went next door to Cinema 2, where Telos Publishing were doing a book launch and a signing event with a bunch of their 60th anniversary releases. Telos Publishing is an independent book publishing company where they release a lot of really cool Doctor Who stuff. They've got one release coming out later this year called the Doctor Who Production Diary, The Hartnell Years, which is a book that I really, really would have loved to have read before I did a full marathon on his series. But that's written by David Brunt, who wasn't at the event, but I really want to try and reach out to David and chat about the book when it comes out this November. But there you had David J. Howe, Daryl Joyce, Alistair McGowan, and Andrew Mark Thompson introducing their books and giving their sales pitch for what they were doing this year. They wanted to do something for the fans, they wanted the fiction, and they wanted the fun. One of the books they've got there from Andrew Mark Thompson is called This Is a Fake, where it's basically an alternate universe of fun, weird Doctor Who merchandising. But the book that I was most interested in was the fanzine book, this epic, heavy tome from Alistair McGowan with an afterword by Chris Chibnall written in it as well, about underground fan publications from the 1960s to the 1980s. It's a corner of Doctor Who I don't know too much about, especially from the classic series years. You know, it was way before my time. I was born in the 90s. So I was wanting to pick this book up anyway, but going to that event and seeing that they had them on sale, and plus Alistair would actually sign them. There we go, to Will. Cheers, Alistair. Yeah, he signed it. I'm really looking forward to diving into this book. This seems like the type of book that Davis, broke canon, would be really, really interested in. There was also another book there from Darryl Joyce called Doctor Who, The Illustrated Journey, which looked really, really good. It was just really expensive. I can imagine if you're an artist or into illustrations, that book is 100% up your alley. For me, it's not quite my field, and it was a bit too expensive anyway, but I'm sure that somebody else would bloody love it. I even got a coaster as well. They were doing like Telos tea as well. I don't know if it was just like a prop or if they were actually selling tea bags. I don't know. I wasn't brave enough to ask. So after the book launch, I took my leaflet and I went downstairs wondering what is next, what's the next thing I can do. So Cosplay Winners is at 125. There were some really terrific cosplays out there at Hooverville. Unfortunately, they put that event side by side in a different theatre to the Paula McGann chat by Kenny Smith. That's not fair. You've got Paul McGann and he's going up against the cosplayers. That's not very fair. But I did have some time before the Paul McGann chat, so I went back downstairs for autographs and got in the queue for Matthew Waterhouse. He was lovely to chat to. I got to tell him how much I really enjoyed his Big Finish release from this year, Prisoners of London, which is a terrific audio novel, a really thoughtful listen. And then he signed my Season 19 collection set to Will from Matthew Waterhouse and little Adric there. So his autograph joins the Peter Davison one that I got at MCM Comic Con last year. 3 autographs down, a few more to go, but I had to go to the Paul McGann chat, and I had no idea that he was such a lover of silent film. When they were taking audience questions, I really wanted to ask him a silent film question, because he mentioned earlier in the chat that sometimes Big Finish will ask him, what actors do you want to work with? We'll bring those actors in. And the day of the convention was the 100-year anniversary of the Lon Chaney Hunchback of Notre Dame silent film premiere, so I really wanted to ask him, with that in mind, who would you cast as Lon Chaney in a Big Finish 8th Doctor audio drama? The geekiest question, but if anyone would have enjoyed it, it probably would have been Paul. After the Paul McGann chat, I stuck around in the venue because Patrick Troughton's son, Michael Troughton, and the current Big Finish 2nd Doctor, was also doing a chat. This one was hosted by Ashley Gregory, and Michael talked about his childhood growing up in the house with Patrick Troughton, meeting John Pertwee and Fraser Hines, working on Doctor Who Last Christmas, where he starred opposite Peter Capaldi, and his recent work for Big Finish as the 2nd Doctor. He was very open that Big Finish have been receptive to the criticisms that they're only doing 1 2nd Doctor post-War Games release a year, and they're wanting to ramp up production so it's not just 1 release a year. And now we get to one of the slight issues with how Hooverville was structured during the day. This isn't something where you can directly blame the organisers for, but I'll explain. So Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred started doing autographs downstairs at 2:25. At 2:25, Michael Troughton was upstairs doing his panel. That's where I was. About 45-50 minutes later, I come downstairs and the queue to see Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred was almost out the door. As in, from one end of the building where Sophie and Sylvester were, all the way through the building to the entrance of the quad. That's where the queue was. And that was by the time I reached it at around 3:15. Now at 4:04, Sylvester and Sophie have to be back upstairs at the John Hurt Theatre to do their live Mythmakers. And then after they've done their Mythmakers chat, they have to leave to go to Wrexham because they have another convention the next day. And when we got to like 15 minutes before they were meant to be going to Mythmakers and the queue was still incredibly long and out of the room, there was clearly like tension building up within the queue because they were thinking we're not going to be able to meet Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred today because there's just too many people here. Hooverville 14 did sell out, but I don't know how many people were there, but there was clearly like a growing tension within the queue that we're not going to be able to see these two today. There were stewards on site as well who were very friendly and very lovely people. They were saying, okay, we've pushed back Mythmakers by 10-15 minutes to get more people in, to get more signatures in. And then unfortunately they had to cut off the queue. They had to get upstairs to record Mythmakers because, you know, once you're there as well, they have to shut the doors. They can't let people in. So on this occasion, unfortunately, I missed out on meeting Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred. However, who had just entered the room at that moment? Michael Troughton. Now, I went into Hooverville 14 not really fussed about getting autographs from the Big Finish Doctors, like no disrespect to them, I just didn't really have anything for them to sign. You've seen what I've been showing so far over the course of this video. I've got Blu-rays and home media stuff, and I don't really own anything for Michael Troughton or Tim Treloar or Jonathan Carley to sign. However, earlier on in the day, when I was in the queue for Michael Jaston, I saw Michael Troughton's table, and on that table was a selection of really cool prints, as well as some books. One of those books was was actually the Patrick Troughton biography that had come out a few years ago that I was really interested in getting. I just hadn't got round to picking up for whatever reason. It's a biography written by Michael Troughton, so I thought, okay, I'll come back later when he's doing autographs and I'll pick up a copy of that book. And that's exactly what I did. I got the Patrick Troughton anniversary edition biography written by Michael Troughton, and I got him to sign it. To Will, best wishes, son of who? Michael Troughton. I also know Michael Troughton narrates the audiobook version of this, so when I get round to doing Patrick Troughton reviews, if that happens in the near future, I'll definitely be going through this book. So before Sylvester and Sophie left to do their Mythmakers, Sophie did a big announcement to the room saying, hey everyone, we're going to be coming back after Mythmakers to do more autographs, which was lovely. Let's just see if that happens. So I stuck around, I got a coffee at the cafe on the ground floor of the quad, and then some guy took me to one side and said, hey, do you want to do some on-camera interview stuff? Is this your first Hooverville? You know, are you involved in the Doctor Who convention? And I was like, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And they took me to like a back area near where the signing was happening, saying, hey, do you mind appearing on camera to talk about some Doctor Who stuff for some upcoming real-time pictures releases? So I waited in the queue, I made friends with a very friendly cheetah, and then I sat down with these two guys who wanted to talk about Inferno, the Happiness Patrol, and Philip Hinchcliffe. I waffled on for about 5 minutes about those topics, and yeah, so I might appear on an upcoming DVD or online release, I don't know, but look out for Mr. TARDIS. Anyway, so the queue reformed back at the autograph table, hoping that Sylvester and Sophie come back, and they did. They very, very kindly stuck around for about another hour after they were meant to, in order to get through the queue and get those autographs signed, which honestly I massively appreciated. I didn't want to take up too much time at the table because they'd already stuck around longer than they planned to, but I very much appreciate it. So firstly, I was able to meet Sylvester McCoy hot off the heels of his 80th birthday. He was signing all of these cards as well at the table. His upcoming Who's the Real McCoy film that's coming out later this year, his memoir. Everybody got a freshly signed version of those, and then he signed my season 26, joining Sophie Aldred's signature at the top there. Like I said, I didn't want to take up too much of his time, but I told him how much me and my wife love him in The Munsters, which I think surprised him. I don't know how many people he was expecting to have talked to him about The Munsters that day. I think I was the only one. My wife loves you in The Munsters. It's like her favourite film.
Oh, really?
Munsters, yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, great.
Yeah, she loves the old school horror, and and she loves you in it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
But with that, I've met every living classic series Doctor, with the exception of Tom Baker. So I've met Peter Davison, I've met Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann. And then right next to McCoy's table, you go from McCoy straight to Sophie Aldred, who I've met before. She's already signed my season 26 at her At Childhood's End event back in Manchester in 2020. It was a few weeks before lockdown, if I remember correctly. So yeah, she signed that there, and she also signed a copy of her book At Childhood's End. I did a video about it at the time. So for this, I brought along my Doctor Who Centenary Specials Steelbook, and got Sophie Aldred to sign where Ace is on the back. I would love, hopefully, one day to get, like, more people to sign, like, around here. Jodie Whittaker on the front, and maybe get Mandip Gill, John Bishop, Sacha Dhawan, Janet Fielding, etc. That would kind of be the goal, but either way, it's a great start. Thank you so much, Sophie. And that was the day. That was Hooverville 14. A slight scare at the end with Sylvester and Sophie, but it's just one of those things. There was clearly a lot of demand. The venue made it a little bit difficult to organise those queues as well. Like I said, they were nearly going out the door. But massive thank you to the organisers who put it all together. Thank you so much to Paul McGann, Sylvester McCoy, Sophie Aldred, Michael Jaston, Matthew Waterhouse, and Michael Troughton as well for signing my stuff. And also, thank you so much to all the people who came along and said hello. I was like, oh, are you Mr. TARDIS? I like you. And we had like proper chats. It was lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for saying hello. It was lovely, especially because I was on my own at the convention. I didn't really know anybody, so I massively appreciated anyone who did come and say hello. Also, massive shout out to Theo and Georgia, artists and Big Finish writers who had their own stand, their own stall there at Hooverville. And in here, I bought this off Georgia, this wonderful artwork of Ace on top of the TARDIS, which I stored in the Centenary Special Steelbook for safekeeping while it was being bundled in my rucksack. So yeah, that's my Hooverville 14 haul. You've got 7 autographs spread across 2 books, 4 box sets, a Blu-ray and a DVD. And the big question is now, would I go again to Hooverville 15? They're already accepting tickets, so you can already get like early bird tickets. I think I would. I went to Hooverville 14 when I saw the guests, and I saw that you could get autographs with the ticket price, and it was only like £50-ish as well. Someone at the beginning of the day said that you can get a free lunch at the cafe. I never confirmed. Maybe. I don't know if they were joking. I didn't have lunch in the end. I was a very hungry boy, but that worked out in the end, because as I left the quad to go back to the car and to pay for parking, the machine said it didn't accept card, so I had to go back out and get some cash out, and then go and spend some cash to get a pizza so that I could eat and then get home in the car. I'd definitely see a guest list first before putting any money down, but that was a really good time. That was a really good convention. It was for the most part really well run. It's just a case of like picking and choosing, because I wanted to see who won the cosplay competition, and I wanted to also see who won the raffle, because there was a raffle as well. I don't think I won it, but I couldn't find out because I was somewhere else in the building when it was being drawn. But stuff like that is more indicative of there's massive demand and there's a lot to see, as opposed to this is a poorly run event. Yeah, in the John Hurt Theatre they had chats with Paul McGann, Michael Troughton, Michael Jaston, Matthew Waterhouse and the Mythmakers ones, but in Cinema 2 as well they had the Big Finish Doctors, they had a Vision on Sound podcast recording with Gary Russell, Type 40 podcast, there was a premiere from Real Time. You know, there's a lot of stuff there. It's just there's only so many hours in the day, and it's you know, it's a bit difficult to pick and choose. But I guess that could be saved for next year. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching this video on my experience at Hooverville, and I shall see you folks next time.